Hello, Gen Genies. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast.
All patrons get early access to new CutOff Genes episodes before they're released to the public.
And along with our undying gratitude, you'll also be able to join our special patron-only Facebook group.
But the most exciting new perk is exclusive access to essays I'm writing from my upcoming memoir. And you guys can help me be editors.
New Patreon supporters will also get a shout-out on the podcast.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Genes podcast, and it would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
Thank you all so much, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon-Jackson, and I am a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and the co-host of this podcast. How's everything going, Julie?
The weather is lovely.
That's about all we can say.
It's all I can say right now.
I know. I mean, I'll just say what's probably on everyone's minds, and that the horrible situation in Ukraine, and this is not a podcast about that, but I know that it weighs on all of us when we see, innocent people suffering. So
it's awful.
Our hearts go out to those people, and anything we can do to support the people of Ukraine.
As all of us should.
Yes. But, to start things off, I saw an article the other day that reminded me of something that we talked about in the New York Times, and it was called When an Ancestry Search Reveals Fertility Fraud.
Aha.
And I don't know if this is the doctor that we have talked about, because there have been so many, quite frankly.
Yeah, we've talked about a couple. There's one in Texas, there's one in Oregon, and there's a documentary about one.
Okay, well, there's this guy was in Rochester, New York. Okay.
Ooh, that's a new one.
And his name was Dr. Wortman, Wortman probably, and he was one of 3 doctors in the area, all of whom knew each other, who fathered multiple children surreptitiously, impregnating their patients with their own
Like it was some
sperm.
kind of a competition or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, the doctor's daughter says, I'm heartbroken that my father betrayed the trust of the patients and families under his care. And it does say, the article does say that there's been more than 50 fertility doctors in the United States that have been accused of fraud in connection with donating sperm. But it is interesting that these 3 all knew each other. They were all friends and colleagues who started in the 1960s, used their own sperm to impregnate women. And one of whom is still alive, and he's lost his license in 1997 for unrelated reasons.
Right. Most of them aren't practicing anymore, but for unrelated reasons.
Right. And there is one who is still practicing, which I can't believe. But the one who lost his license, who said he actually was interviewed for this article, and he said, yes, it's possible that he was the biological father of at least one of his patients' children. And he says it wasn't exactly ethical, but it wasn't unknown to happen. I assume other doctors did it, but no one ever talked about it. I did it when a donor didn't respond, and women were anxious to be inseminated, and the timing was crucial. He
did it because it was free.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
easy.
He can easily talk about like, oh, I'm doing it for her, and in some way, make himself the hero of the story.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But clearly, it was a breach of trust and ethics at best.
At best.
At best.
Right. Yeah.
These physicians' actions may have been unethical, but they were not considered illegal at the time.
Because it wasn't regulated.
Yeah, because who would think to do such a thing? You got to make a law because somebody's done something reprehensible like this, right?
Right.
So anyway, they talked about this one guy who had, wanted to find out who his father was, who his birth father was, and what's really interesting, and this is kind of sad, because his mother... All right, Mr. Barry was both stunned and relieved to find out that this Dr. Wortman was his birth father, the sperm donor, I guess I should say. Although his mother had asked for a donor who looked like the actor Tom Selleck. She had always thought that her son looked more like Mr. Wortman.
Oh, or Dr. Wortman.
And I wish you could see Dr. Morris Wortman,
Oh, Dr. Wortman.
He is not a Tom Selleck.
Sounds like he thought pretty highly of himself, however.
We laugh, and it's not funny, but it's funny that this is what she asked for and this is what she got. It's just, So anyway, anyone wants to look it up, it's on the New York Times. I believe it was a couple of days ago at the end of February when an ancestry search reveals fertility fraud. Again, we've talked about this kind of thing on the podcast before.
And it's not going away until, and these people who are uniting against fertility fraud, basically the victims in this, the children, are the ones that are going to get a law finally passed. But they're going to have to spend their lives trying to regulate this.
Yeah.
Because their mothers were defrauded. And they are a result of that. It's such a bittersweet thing.
Yep.
It's so confusing. Much like being an adoptee is confusing.
There's a woman quoted in the article. Her name is Tracy Portugal, and she lives in Washington State, and she runs a website called donordeceived.org, which catalogs and tracks the legal cases dealing with fraud and donor conception. And I suppose you could go there and learn more about that if you are so interested in it, or if you feel that is something that might have something to do with your own personal history.
I just like the name Tracy Portugal.
It's pretty great.
It's a great name.
And that Dr. Wortman is no Tom Selleck.
No, and
Tom Selleck is no Dr. Wortman.
That is the title of this episode, right? Okay, moving right along.
Yes,
I want to shout out to some new patrons.
Oh, thank you very much, new Patreon patrons.
We have Denise Gielhart, who is one of the co-hosts of Murderous Roots with Denise and Zelda, a podcast that I actually was on.
Oh.
Episode 39 in the last couple of weeks. It was Found in a Cave about Joseph Henry Lovelace. He was a murderer, an axe murderer, whose remains were found in a cave. That actually they got the idea from our podcast. I guess I mentioned it in one of the way earlier episodes.
Really?
Yeah, but his remains were identified after 100 years when they were found in a cave in Idaho. By the DNA Doe Project.
Oh, wow.
So I got to guest and talk about what exactly the DNA Doe Project does.
I love these little cross-pollination between podcasts. It's wonderful.
Yeah, me too. So guys, check that out. You can get it wherever you get us, basically. And I'll explain it. So it's called Murderous Roots, and Zelda tells the story of this murderer, this criminal, of what they did. And then Denise is a genealogist, and she goes back into their genealogy, their family history, to see if there are any other murderers in there.
How interesting.
Also, a lot of friends of the show. Rebecca Autumn Sansom, who is the second part of her interview, is on this episode, who is the director and subject of Reckoning with the Primal Wound, showed up as a patron.
Oh, thank you so much,
Rebecca. Which is awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And last but certainly not least, Tim McGraw.
The Tim McGraw?
I was waiting for you to say that. Yes, I was very excited until I realized it's Tim McCraw.
Oh, well.
With a C instead of a G. But you know what? Just as happy to have him.
Yeah, and you know what? Tim McGraw never did anything for us.
You want to hear an interesting piece of information about Tim McGraw?
Yes.
Not McCraw.
Not McCraw, yes.
Yes. Both Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, who are married, are also adopted.
Oh, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Well, then he should be listening to our podcast. He might learn something.
You know what? That is why when I first saw the name, I was like, oh, what? But no.
Well, we appreciate you, Tim McCraw.
Hey, there's something called Find a Grave that I've talked about a little bit in the past, and I've never. When we're looking for obituaries, a lot of the times, Find a Grave will come up as, and I'll explain what it is. It's a not-for-profit, fully volunteer organization where people volunteer to go to cemeteries and take pictures of headstones and catalog them for people. And then if there is an obituary, they'll add obituary to it. And in lieu of obituaries, at least you can find something like that. Neither of my parents had an actual obituary, which I've always regretted. And I realized, well, I can write and I did one for my dad that is on an external site, but he was cremated and I still have his remains. So, there's no burial site or anything.
Right.
But I realized that you can, even if they're not buried anywhere, you can add an obituary for them yourself manually.
Oh, that's nice.
So I wrote obituaries for both of my parents and then also their parents. So I finally have, if anybody is researching them, they'll be able to go there. So that's something that people can do, and anyone can be a Find a Grave user. In fact, my somebody had already cataloged her. They'd taken a picture of her headstone. She's buried in Washington State, and they'd already done it. But if you can go in and say, hey, this is my mother, can I take over this administration of this one?
Right.
And, and they'll, of course, let you do that if they think you.
That sounds like a really helpful thing, especially if you don't live in an area where you can go and visit the grave,
Absolutely.
Like if you wanted a grave, just say in Australia and you're here in the States and it's just, or, anywhere where you just can't get to, that's really helpful. Right.
It is. Yeah, it's very helpful. And a lot of people do it. A lot of people volunteer to do it. There are a lot of genealogists who just like to hang out in graveyards. I don't know if you knew that. But and they'll just take pictures and then upload them to Find a Grave. And it's very helpful for genealogists. And I think it's very cool. And I love that there's that added level of being able to memorialize my parents in that way. Definitely. For anyone, anyone else.
I don't know if you knew this, but my mom's obituary was actually an article in the Orange County Register.
I was just looking for your mom's obituary.
Yeah, because they did like a whole article on her because she was an entertainer when she passed on. And there was, I remember doing an interview with a reporter about it at the time. Of course, it was such a weird time because, when you're in mourning and everything. But
it's a weird time.
But they did a nice article on her, and I remember the picture.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Where was she? Was she playing in bars in Orange County at the time?
She was playing in a fine dining restaurant at the time. Matter of fact, she had worked the evening that she passed on. She had worked. She died in her sleep that night.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it was very, very much a surprise.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it was good for her because. Yeah. She was still vital and performing and working, but harder for us because it was so sudden. You
didn't have time to prepare.
She wasn't ill or anything,
Yeah, and she wasn't elderly.
No, even that was one thing. I felt almost guilty when I was doing the interview for her obituary or for that article, was having to tell her real age.
Oh no!
Because I was brought up like, don't you ever tell my age, Richard, because I'm a performer and nobody is going to want to hire an old lady. Of course, she told me that when she was probably in her 40s. But
right, that ship has sailed. There's no way you can get around it anymore. I mean, IMDb will give everybody's birth date, so you can't even lie about it anymore.
Right, but my mother had just turned 67 the month before she passed.
She was young.
She was very young. Yes.
We should probably take a break.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Genes Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, guess what is happening April 1st, 2022?
I have no idea.
The 1950 census will finally be released to the public.
Oh, because it's 72
years.
Wow.
It's very exciting for people like me.
No, I get that. And, I'm kind of excited to see it too in that, like, at least now there's people who I knew, like, in my own life who were alive at that time.
Exactly. Well, and that's what's so exciting, especially for somebody like me. A lot of people who were adopted in the baby scoop era, their parents were born in the 40s.
Yeah.
So we're finally going to be able to find people that were living that are our biological parents.
Right. And why, again, is it 72 years? Like, what is that just a random number, or was that a lifespan?
They speculated that was a lifespan.
Right.
They speculated for privacy reasons. They were like, the average person lives about 72 years.
Do you think it'll be something that will be searchable? I mean, is it going to be digitized? And
I'm going to tell you.
Oh, good.
I'm going to tell you all about it.
Please do. Go ahead, Julie. You're a fountain of information.
So this is from the National Archives in December 14th, 2021. This was the release. Employees from across the agency have worked on digitizing and indexing the records and developing and testing a new dedicated 1950 census website, said project manager Carol Lagundo, who leads the 1950 Census Project. It's taken innovation and creativity to keep this project on track throughout the pandemic and to continue to meet our project milestones. We hope the public will benefit from all the hard work. The new website will include a name search function powered by an AI, an artificial intelligence / machine learning, AIML, and optical character recognition, OCR, technology tool. This is important for genealogists and other researchers who rely on census records for new information about the nation's past. The OCR, optical character recognition, being used to transcribe the handwritten names from the census rolls is about as good as the human eye.
Hopefully it's better than my eyes, because they're not great.
Right. Yeah, mine either.
Which human eye?
Yeah, really. A baby's. And others are difficult to decipher, so the National Archives developed a transcription tool to enable users to submit name updates. So if you are looking and you can see something that the OCR didn't catch, you can update it yourself, the corrections yourself. I mean, I don't think that it'll automatically do it, but you can submit it for them to approve it.
Yeah.
This will allow other users to find specific names more easily, and it provides an opportunity for the public to help the agency share these records with the world.
Wow, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They're encouraging interested members of the public to use the tool and assist the agency to make records as accurate as possible.
I wonder if they asked any questions in 1950 that, like, were specific to that census. You know, they come up with different, like, I don't know, how many homes owned a hula hoop, or something.
What did you get in the hula hoop row? Yeah, some years are more specific than others. I like the ones that say, like, how long have you been married, or is this your first or second marriage, or what state were you born in? I think most of them have what state were you born in. Right. Yeah, I'm curious to see that too, if there's any new information that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, and for those of us that are like Gladys Kravitz, we want to know, like, oh, was this your first marriage?
And how many hula hoops did you take with you to the second marriage?
Abner. There used to be one Darren, now there's another Darren.
They looked weirdly alike, but different.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually, just on a side note, I have rewatched most of Bewitched during the pandemic.
Of course you have.
And
Mm-hmm.
my vote still goes that the first Darren, Dick York, was far superior to the second one.
He was also better looking.
He was just, I just believed, he was just sweeter. He was like, I really believed he loved Samantha. Whereas the second one was just, he was only playing mean. He wasn't playing love. He wasn't playing the care. Yeah.
I also felt like he was and this may be construed as bullying, but I felt that he was like the caricature version of the original one.
Maybe.
Like physically, he looked like him, but he kind of looked like he was exaggerated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But we digress.
We digress.
So anyway, that was a good census story. I heard
Yay.
someone, like a little birdie told me that you have a from the trenches story.
I do. And it's not, normally I will recount trenches stories when they're solved. This one is not solved, but for a very good reason. Oh. And I want to tell you why.
Okay.
So this is a case I've actually had for a couple of years. I got it when I was working with the private investigator. And a lot of the people who still had open cases through them opted to stay with me. And well, number one, the company didn't tell them I wasn't there anymore, and so they would reach out, and I'm like, I don't work there anymore, but I'd be happy to help you.
Right.
And so in this particular case, okay, so this gentleman's mother, whose DNA I'm using his, but hers is in there. She's still living.
Okay.
She was born in like the mid-30s. And when I was hired originally, it was to confirm who they thought the mother probably was, and look and try to figure out who the father was. And I was able to confirm. I knew it was one of several siblings, and I think we narrowed it down. And God, it was so long ago, I can't remember exactly, but. That was solved. And at that time, I was like, we need to wait for closer matches, even though this first match is pretty close. It was like, he matches like a second cousin. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing about that is his name is Steve Hodel. Does that name sound familiar at all to you?
It does, but I don't know why it does.
Okay. There was a man that lived in Hollywood, and his name was George Hill Hodel. He was a doctor, and he lived, there's a very famous house up on Franklin that looks like a Mayan temple.
Yes.
And the family lived in this house. Dr. George Hodel, Steve Hodel believes, and he was in trouble for a lot of other things too, but Steve Hodel believes that he is the murderer of the Black Dahlia. Oh,
wow. Okay.
And
I didn't see that coming.
I know. This kind of goes back to the murderous roots thing. But he and I've read a lot of his stuff, and he has compelling evidence. Not like it's more compelling than your average
dime store novel.
Theory.
Oh,
yeah, or conspiracy theory. Uh-huh. So I was, and there was a series last year called I Am the Night, which was based on him, and which was loosely based on him. I mean, he was in it, not on Steve, on his father. And Steve had been a police officer, but his father was, notorious. And if ever anyone gets a chance, he has a website. This is why I don't mind saying his name, because he's very public and very out there in the open. So he matches as about a second cousin. And that was very exciting to me. And I looked, and he knows, I looked at his tree, and I built what I could from it. So his father was an only child. And the two parents both came from Russia. Mm-hmm. And changed their names when they left Russia. Well, the grandmother was Russian, but she was a dentist in Paris at the time that they met. And the other one had escaped Russia, and they had met in Paris and then come here, and they had changed the name from another name that I can't remember, but they changed it to Hodel, which is a Danish name. And here, the problem is her maiden name is nowhere in the DNA, and neither is the birth name of the father. Now, these people are Ashkenazi Jewish, which is a problem, just because it's an endogamous community.
We talked about this before, yes.
Yes, yeah. Which meaning sometimes people match closer than they should. So I talked to Steve Hodel and to try to get him to tell me if he knew anything about siblings of his grandparents. And he really doesn't know anything. But there was like a family in Pasadena that he said was somehow related to his grandmother. But that name doesn't come up in the DNA. And I don't, I'm taking every route that I can. Now, it gets even more interesting when I go down the list. And the second to highest match, turns out I looked at her tree, and she is like 100 and something centimorgans. No. I'm sorry. She's way lower. She's below 100.
Okay.
But in looking at her tree, it has her complete mother's line. But her father's line, it just has her father. And in a tree, it says Arm & Hammer. As in the Arm & Hammer.
Really?
And I was like, oh, is she just thinking that? Is that a rumor? Or so I Googled her mother and Arm & Hammer, and sure enough, her mother was a known mistress of Arm & Hammer.
Well, there you go.
There's an article written about it where when she got pregnant with the DNA match, that he married her off to some guy in Mexico and paid for her, but then surreptitiously took her out of his will. Sounds like a great guy. But so there we have that, and they're, of course, Ashkenazi Jewish. Then there's another line, which would make sense because you have the relatives of the grandfather, but also the relatives of the grandmother that don't cross over. And they are Russian. I Googled the name, and I found out who the one match was. His mother happens to be a match on 23andMe, and she's about a second cousin, maybe once removed. And she is a Russian oligarch.
Huh.
So she was, I think, born in Russia or was born to a first-generation American-Russian family, but she's done a lot of business with Russia. She lives they're very, very, very rich. There's so much written about their properties and money laundering stuff. And and I know her maiden name, but there's no information out there about her family. And of course, all of those records are in Russia, and there's nothing to reference.
Right. So let me get this straight. In his family tree, he has a Russian oligarch and Arm & Hammer.
Yes.
So like these very wealthy, like
yes.
a titan of industry.
Right. Well, and those are in the tree of the client. Yeah. Those are all people that are the match to my client. The Russian no, Arm & Hammer?
Yeah.
Yeah, Arm & Hammer the Arm & Hammer daughter is not related to the Hodels.
I see.
Or the Russian oligarchs. Okay. They're a separate Russian line, which is probably the grandmother or the grandfather, whereas you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But so I have all three of these people in the tree, none of them connecting to each other.
I see.
Therefore, I'm stuck until we get a closer match, or one of these Russian oligarchs calls me back. And I'm thinking that's not going to happen. I don't know.
They might have other things on their mind right now with the ruble plummeting.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, you won't be an oligarch for long.
What's that from?
You won't be an orphan for long, from Annie.
Okay.
On that note, I think we should take a break.
Okie doke.
Thank you for listening to CutOff Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast. Now, back to the program.
Okay, it is time for part 2 of my conversation with Rebecca Autumn Sansom of Reckoning with the Primal Wound.
Great.
It's a spectacular movie. I hope everybody can see it. I think actually right now, you can do like pay on demand or something.
Oh, how nice. Yeah.
But if you go to any of her social media, you'll be able to find out, where you can see it next.
Do you remember where we were when we left off last time?
Yeah, I do. I do know I finally got to where I was asking her about her childhood as an adoptee.
Oh, great. Well, let's listen in.
Okay.
Tell me about your childhood. Let's go back to that. I want to know about your childhood and how you felt, and if there was a specific time that you came out of the fog.
Oof. Yes. Well, my childhood was happy, as is pretty much conveyed in the film. Mm-hmm. I do remember, I used to say that I always knew that my parents told me from the time I could remember. But I actually, the more I think about it, I do remember the day they told me I was adopted.
How old were
you? And I don't
you?
know why I just blanked that out. I was, I think, 3 or 4.
So it was a specific, they sat you down and told you as opposed to something.
My mom says she read me books, but I don't remember those at all. And of course, didn't think they were about my situation.
Oh, right. They would just read it as if it was a storybook.
Yeah, like, a little squirrel got adopted.
Right.
But I do remember them sitting me down and saying, you have another mommy out there.
Huh.
And I took it in stride, and I think I went out to play, but then it just wouldn't leave. Like, what? I have another mommy out there?
Yeah.
And I didn't think about that from then on. The whole ruminating thing that David Brzezinski talks about started then when I was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm still happy childhood. Never talked about it again, I don't think.
Really? You wouldn't go, you wouldn't periodically go to your parents and say, what did my other mommy look like?
No.
Really?
I would think it all the time.
But you didn't feel it was safe to ask them?
I guess not.
Yeah.
Because I didn't.
Okay.
And it wasn't either.
Or do you
kind
think...
of like...
Right. But do you think that... Well, I was about to say, is that the feeling you got from them? Was it an unspoken truth that it would be rude to ask questions about yourself?
Well, you get that when I asked my dad questions in the film. Our interview was 1 minute long, and the whole interview's in the film.
Yes. Yes.
That was the vibe.
Yes, he's very, very quick and just, you've always been here. That's it. Yeah.
And then he stands up.
Yep.
It's over.
Yep. We're done with this conversation. Yeah. Yeah. I had that
You've
too.
always been there.
I got that
so
too.
I'm sure if I did say anything, which I don't remember, he would have said something like that.
Okay.
Like a conversation over.
Right. Our whole thing was, it was something that should be a secret. And their thinking behind it, or they told me, was because kids will tease you. Kids will, that'll set you apart from the kids and make you different and give them a reason to bully you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I heard that too. Again, the script.
Yes.
So weird.
Yes. And guess what? The kids did. But
yeah,
it had nothing to do with the fact that I was adopted.
No, I don't remember ever being bullied because of being adopted.
I mean, I remember kids saying, I have such a specific memory of a girl up the street saying something like she wanted to be mean to me. And so she said, "You're adopted." She said adopted with a C instead of a P. And I just kind of went, "You're saying it wrong." But,
okay, great. Amazing burn.
Yes, yeah, cool burn. But
I don't remember ever having even that, but that was like it. That was the one.
I mean, yeah, I was bullied a lot, but it was mainly from my brother, who was also adopted, and and other, and just people, just because I was the type of kid that was easy to bully, basically.
Oh, me too. I was so skinny.
Yeah, I was weird as hell looking, so, and just different.
Yeah.
And because I was so different from my family, I think it made me specifically odd, I guess.
Did you look different from them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same race, but they were all tall and slim, and I was very small, and I was freckly, and and I had this was my mother is from the generation that and I've heard this in the adoption industry, that there was a time when redheaded kids were cheaper. Have you heard this?
No.
I have heard that. And I was told that there was a chance I might have red hair. And my mother was, and I had curls too. And my mother hated curly hair and she hated red hair. And she was absolutely horrified that I was going to be a curly, which to me is the most adorable thing ever on the face of the earth. I know. And the reason they told her that was that my supposed biological father had auburn hair. And then my biological mother told me that the nurses at the hospital used to call me Penny. So I was apparently a redheaded baby. But why was I a redheaded baby? Because because that guy wasn't really my father. And I don't remember ever having red hair.
That's so weird.
I think she imagined that and like just imagined that I had red hair and like came up with this whole story. I don't know. It's very strange.
Okay,
I know. Anyway, so my mother was very concerned about the fact that I might have red hair and was delighted that I ended up not having red hair. But that kind of what started the like trying to mold me into being what she thought, was the perfect child. And to her, it was like a kid with straight hair and uneven bangs and all, and I had all of them. I was cross-eyed, so I had horn-rimmed glasses, and I kind of had buck teeth, and I walked like I was pigeon-toed, and my hips wiggled when I walked, like Marilyn Monroe. And I know there were so many things, and the kids used to call me a poser. Oh, I was, in hindsight, adorable, but at the time.
Yeah.
What a nightmare, because the kids thought I was doing all of that on purpose. Like that literally was an affect that I was doing to get attention.
Oh, I love this.
I know. And I will say the first thing when I first met my mother, I didn't see the resemblance. However, she was walking in front of me one day and she has the walk.
Oh,
it has to do with the way your hips are connected to your legs or something. Like they just move more than the average
really
person's
genetic.
hips.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Anyway, wow, we really got off on a tangent about me just
now.
Sorry about that.
I needed that. Just picturing you walking. Your glasses.
I was adorable. I was adorable. Okay, so tell me.
I don't know where we were before then.
Well, okay, so let's just go with my next question. Tell me about the day you said, "Hey, I'm going to make a movie."
Well, I did Google. Did someone make a movie version of the Primal one, which is not completely a movie version of the book?
But it's put that really the only thing that references it.
Right. Yeah. So something inspired by with Nancy Berrier in it.
Yeah.
And there was nothing because I wanted to send it to my brother who was on the struggle bus with addiction. He's also adopted. And my cousin, same thing.
Okay.
Both adopted. And I could not believe no one had done it. And I'd also had a couple friends say I should document my story, my adoption story, throughout my life, and always thought it was not good enough. It's not like exciting.
Right.
But somehow those two things together and being pregnant.
Yep.
Was enough to like spark it.
Mm-hmm. I think pregnancy sparks a lot of things in adoptees.
I do too.
Wouldn't you? I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Yeah,
that should be studied as well.
Absolutely. And here's, I'm going to go back to another story because everything you're saying keeps reminding me of things. I used to be a musical theater actress, and there's a show called Baby, a musical called Baby.
Okay.
And it's about three couples at different points in their lives having babies. And the youngest couple they're 18, 19, and they're in like their first year of college, and she gets pregnant, and I played that character twice. I got my equity card playing that character. And there is one, and they're not married, and they talk about he wants to marry her, but she doesn't want to, but they never think about adoption, and she just wants to raise them together, but she doesn't think they should have to get married. Anyway,
wow.
Until she feels the baby kick for the first time at the end of Act 1, there's this whole song called The Story Goes On, which is about her feeling the baby kick for the first time. And it's epic. Epic.
I gotta Google this now.
Yeah. The story goes on. Just Google The Story Goes On, Baby, and you'll hear probably the most famous version of it is Liz Calloway
Julie
singing.
Jackson.
Yes, I don't think there's a version of. Oh wait, there might be a version.
I'm Googling it with your name.
Oh, good luck. Julie Dixon Jackson. They don't know me as Julie Jackson in the biz.
Yes, that's the IMDb name. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. But both times, and it was kind of like my signature role for a long time because of the way I sang that song more than anything. But it didn't connect to me until after I had my daughter, the depth behind that song and how much more I could have brought to it.
Oh, I thought wow. That's amazing though that you brought enough to it to like.
Well, but I'm an actress, but I didn't have a life experience. Really, that character is so young, and most people playing that character will not have had a child. So by the time, and I had my daughter when I was 32, so it was long before, and I guess the second time I played it, I was like 28. So I was closer.
Did it come back to you, that song? Did it like...
Always. The song has always come back to me. And the third time I sang it was in a showcase, and they said, we want you to sing The Story Goes On because you're known for that. And I was like, oh, I haven't sung that song in years. And it was such a completely different.
Wow. Then you could bring it.
Yeah. Then I was like, oh my God. Because for me, it was about the note. It was about that high note at the end. And blowing the doors off the place. Whereas it's actually about the story. The story goes on.
Oh,
anyway, yeah.
But it is that thing of, I don't know, is it the hormones or what? Those pregnancy hormones, creativity, just being creative people.
Right. And we're used to, and we're literally creating the most important thing in the world at that moment. And so our juices are literally flowing.
And like, I don't know if I was thinking I should delve into the primal wound more now that I'm having a baby. I don't think that was it, but underlying that, it was very interesting to be filming. And so many people ask me, well, I think you even mentioned like, well, you came out of the fog after having your kid.
Yeah.
And people ask me how it was having Frankie Joe and did it stir up everything. And honestly, I think I disassociated a little bit because I had the camera in there with me and I was filming Jill before having Frankie Joe. And I kind of was thinking about the movie.
Interesting.
Throughout that whole time.
Yeah.
Until Frankie was 18 months old.
You were filming.
Filming and
Oh, interesting.
But I always get stumped with that question. And I think it's because I found the salve to not go there.
Yeah. Well,
which I do a lot of the times. I go behind the camera.
Yes. Oh, interesting. That's like the ultimate dissociation. Interesting.
But I've done that since high school.
Right. Even though I think I came out of the fog after I had my daughter and, my postpartum issues were, right after I had her, I still never connected the two until a long time after that. You know what I mean? I think that's what it was. I think that's why I was so hypervigilant and all of that stuff. But I just thought I was just, postpartum hormones. But I think there's that whole other level of holy crap, this was me, and I was literally by myself somewhere, raised by wolves.
I still don't think I've processed that.
I don't think I have either, to tell you the truth.
Like when you say it, I'm like, I haven't really sat with that.
Yes.
That her not being there again.
Yeah.
Moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole thing. I kind of feel like I mean, I want to delve into it more, but I really don't know what else to say about it except, that's up,
Yeah.
And nobody thought, nobody ever thought that I would be affected by that. That's why they really thought that we were just literally gummy bears with no past and no connective tissue and no brain activity.
It's really alarming.
Bizarre. So let me see. Okay, so talk about, I'm seeing you more now. Is the film going to be in wide release? How can people see it?
I hope so. I mean, do you know anybody?
Okay, so you're looking for a distributor?
Yes, and we pitched it to sales agents in the summertime, and they were like some big ones were interested, but I'm nobody, and there was like nothing really to show for us, and they need to be unanimous, I guess.
Oh.
And everyone and their mom made a documentary last year. So all these established filmmakers were getting those worldwide release deals.
Okay.
I should go back now. Well, so this is the new plan, is like do the film festival circuit, win some awards, which we're doing.
Good.
And then get noticed that way. And then or go viral and somebody will come to us, you know?
Right. Right.
How that goes.
Okay.
Okay. My dream, of course, I could just put it out there. I know everybody's like, just put it out there. And I don't want that. I want it to get to the general population. I would love for it to be in the theater.
Yes. Do the film festivals. Keep doing that. Give it time. I totally hear what you're saying. But and I'll do what I can to really push it as much as I can as well, because I think everybody needs to see it. I really, really do.
Thank you. I love hearing you say that.
It's true. It's true though. It's and I've watched a lot and I've read a lot, but this is the one that cuts me the deepest to the core, to where like I feel like this is important. Everybody in my life needs to see this, because it's so just kind of on the nose, and it's there. You can't argue about anything.
Oh my God! Thank you.
That's what I have to say about that.
I have got to quote you on that, please.
Yes, really. Put me in the. You can use me as a blurb.
Please. Thank you. That's what I need too. I need blurbs. I need followers.
Oh, I am happy to. So yeah. So follow Rebecca on TikTok, guys. If you're following me, you can find her. But
we are having a screening, because we're doing
talk
these
about
like
that.
little private ones online, and Nancy's coming. We did one on January 8th, and it was really successful. People came from all over the world, which was very surprising to me, but amazing.
Well, it's an honor to have you on, and I'm so glad we had a chance to do this. Rebecca Autumn Sansom, thank you so very much. Oh, I want to mention one more thing. Your Autumn, the Autumn name. Can you explain that?
Well, that's what Jill named me.
Okay. Interesting.
Because I was born on October 28th.
Yes. The poem. Oh, the poem. Sorry, I digress. So you actually, did you legally change your middle name to Autumn?
No, I should. Steven, my husband, wants me to change it legally.
Does he?
And I feel like I should at this point.
But you did the tattoo thing, so.
And I mean, that I just did one night.
One drunken night.
Yes.
Let's go get tattoos.
I know what I'm doing to deal with this reunion.
Yes.
I think it was year 1,
Really?
And now it's been 10 years. It might be today. I don't know. I forget the actual day in January of 2012.
Oh, wow.
That Jill and I talked for the first time. But I've got to find that, because it might literally be now, today. Yeah. That would make sense, because...
Yeah. Mine was... I know exactly the day that I first spoke to my mother, because it was Mother's Day.
Oh.
So that'll get you every time. And you know what? I just looked it up recently. I mean, I knew it was Mother's Day, but I didn't know the exact date. Recently looked it up. It's my son's birthday. May 14th. Okay. Yeah. Rebecca Autumn Sansom, thank you for talking to me. I want everybody to see this film, because it's beautiful and it's important.
Thanks, Julie. It was such an honor to be on.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that. You guys see this film if you can. It's spectacular. You can find Rebecca on all the socials, including TikTok.
You know where you can find me, Julie?
Where?
My website, richardcastle.com. Or you can go to the Twitter or to the Instagram and see me at Castle Songs.
You can find everything about me at cutoffgenes.com, Cutoff Genes Investigations. You can find the podcast there. You can find the blog there. You can find all my socials there, including my TikTok, which I'm on a forced sabbatical from right now because I'm losing my mind. That's it. Check us out, guys. If you need help, if you would like to hire me, I am so available right now. You should see all the jewelry I've made because of all the time in my hands. So, I offer discounts for listeners, and I'd be happy to work with you.
And Julie, let's tell everybody what the most important thing is to know.
The truth is in your genes.